So ahead of Joe Biden's coronation in his home state of Delaware tonight, we speak now to our US Correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who's been closely watching developments at the NDC for us. So history in the making there, Sherwin. Kamala Harris on a night Democrats really didn't hold back in making the case for why Donald Trump should be removed from office this November. We just saw that, the heavyweight endorsement from Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama.
Spare a thought, though, Tsepiso, for Kamala Harris, accepting the nomination, and usually that would be greeted with rapturous applause in a packed arena of thousands of delegates, and she stood there to pause in a moment of silence, in an empty crowd because of this virtual event due to the coronavirus. But certainly a historic moment. She tipped her hat to the women whose shoulders she stood on. She mentioned Hillary Clinton by name, Mary Church Terrell, Mary McLeod Bethune, Diane Nash, and Shirley Chisholm, of course, the first black woman to ever run for the presidency in the United States. So real trailblazers on whose shoulders she gets to pronounce herself as accepting the nomination. But also, despite the historic nature of this was an issue-driven event on Wednesday night, really about what Democrats seek to do were they to win the presidency in November. Not only the presidency, the Senate and the House of Congress. They talked about climate change. They talked about protecting voter rights, the affordable child care, particularly an issue for women, LGBTQI rights, structural racism, which of course is a big discussion point in the aftermath of George Floyd's death, criminal justice reform, something Kamala Harris spoke to specifically. Let's watch, Tsepiso.
Black, Latino, and indigenous people are suffering and dying disproportionately. And this is not a coincidence. It is the effect of structural racism, of inequities in education and technology, healthcare and housing, job security and transportation, the injustice in reproductive and maternal health care, in the excessive use of force by police, and in our broader criminal justice system. This virus, it has no eyes, and yet it knows exactly how we see each other and how we treat each other. And let's be clear, there is no vaccine for racism. We've got to do the work. For George Floyd, for Breonna Taylor, for the lives of too many others to name, for our children, and for all of us.
Also paying tribute to her mother, of course, an Indian immigrant divorcing her father when she was 5 years old. She said a mother who raised her daughters to be strong black women and to be proud of their Indian heritage. So a really diverse candidate in this election and not hiding or shying away from it, Tsepiso.
Showing a much anticipated speech from former President Barack Obama, the speech that he gave last night. Several headlines emerging out of that. Some saying Obama's scathing takedown of Donald Trump, saying another Obama blast reality show presidency. So tell us a little bit more about what he spoke of and the threats that he sees. So let's take a listen.
More than anything, what I know about Joe, what I know about Kamala, is that they actually care about every American. And that they care deeply about this democracy. They believe that in a democracy, the right to vote is sacred, and we should be making it easier for people to cast their ballots, not harder. They believe that no one, including the president, is above the law, and that no public official, including the president, should use their office to enrich themselves or their supporters.
So, Sherwin, some saying that it was quite unprecedented for a former president to criticize a sitting president as Obama did to Trump last night.
An unspoken rule, certainly. You know, once you leave office, you give your successor the space to really put his agenda forward and try and produce results in that regard. But such is the consternation within this Democratic Party. You heard the president talk about some of his concerns about the pillars of democracy that they believe have been undermined by the incumbent and the Republican Party in the last 3.5 years. He talked about, how Kamala and Joe, the vice presidential nominee and the the Democratic nominee, understand that in this democracy, a commander-in-chief doesn't use the men and women of the military as political props to deploy against peaceful protesters on their own soil. They understand that political opponents are not un-American just because they disagree with you, that the free press is not the enemy but is there to hold officials to account, that our ability to work together to solve problems like the coronavirus pandemic depends on a fidelity to facts and science and logic and not making up stuff. There's a big concern in this Democratic Party, given what happened in 2016 when they came so close and lost so big, that could repeat itself come 2020. So the consensus in terms of the speeches that were delivered is turn up to vote. Hillary Clinton, of course, also warning that you can win this election by 3 million votes and lose the Electoral College. So there's a big concern that turnout is going to be an issue. Everybody needs to vote. You have to translate the protest movement you saw in the aftermath of George Floyd into a good turnout come November 3rd, Sipiso.
So all of that being packaged in the form of Joe Biden, that we're looking at political experience here. He's in the spotlight today after building up to this moment. What can we expect, Sherwin, in terms of tonight's finale at the DNC?
I'll just run through some of the speakers tonight. Governor Gavin Newsom is the governor of California, the largest state in this country, the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world, and very hard hit by the coronavirus. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, herself and her family, a victim of COVID-19. She's the mayor of Atlanta that was really in one of the epicenters of the protest movement after George Floyd died. Senator Tammy Duckworth, who was on the short list to be the vice presidential pick. She's a former Army veteran, a helicopter pilot that lost both her legs in combat. And so really a diverse group of people, including Pete Buttigieg, the one-time presidential candidate for this ticket himself, the first openly gay candidate who often spoke to Sipiso about what happens after November 3rd. What do you do with a divided country, as it will be if Donald Trump wins or if Joe Biden wins? And so I think what you will hear from Joe Biden is what kind of leader he's going to be. We're told he's not going to criticize Donald Trump directly, but he's going to talk about what he will bring as a leader, what his vision of America looks like, what his experience, some 50 plus years, and as a vice president to the first black president in the United States, what he can bring to this country in its current context, fighting a coronavirus pandemic, which they believe has been mismanaged, a huge economic burden here with over 10%, millions of people unemployed. What does his vision look like for America once Donald Trump is removed? That's the project for Joe Biden tonight.
Thanks a lot, Sherwin Bryce-Pease, our correspondent in New York.